Now live to Avi Hyman, a spokesman for the Israeli government. Thank you very much for joining us on BBC News. Appreciate your time. As I mentioned, Israel's top military prosecutors described the incident as very grave. What was the aim of the strike?
So I can tell you that we were going after two key Hamas leaders, one of which was the head of their operations in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. The other was one of his henchmen. These people have tons of Israeli blood on their hands. Blood also of Britons on their hand, the likes of which of the D family, whose the mother and two daughters were gunned down just about a year ago on their way to the seaside. We also have a member of Knesset, of the Israeli parliament, who in 2003 was driving down the road with her husband. She was heavily pregnant, and gunmen shot at their car. Her husband jumped over her to protect her and the fetus, and luckily did, but was shot to death. These are heinous terror crimes. This is terrorism against civilians. What happened last night, sadly, there is no moral equivalence between the two things. What happened last night is we went after two high-value Hamas targets, and it appears from initial reports that somehow a fire broke out, and that sadly took the lives of others. Now, I say it appears too because it is under investigation, and the IDF investigates every accident of this nature to see what actually happened, whereas Hamas runs to the media to tell tales that will help them propaganda-wise. I'm old enough to remember at the beginning of the war when there was we were told that hundreds were killed at a hospital, the Al-Adha hospital, from an Israeli missile, and it turned out that about 10 people were sadly killed from an Islamic Jihad missile that fell short. 30% of the Hamas and Islamic Jihad missiles, of which we've seen more than 10,000 fired at Israeli civilians, fall short on their own people. So it was a tragic night, but we're looking into it.
So was this camp a safe area where you had asked displaced Palestinians in Rafah to go?
So that is unclear. It appears that, but it wouldn't surprise me in the sense that these Hamas terrorists for 16 years have embedded themselves under civilian areas. They're shooting from mosques, from United Nations schools. These are things that we've uncovered in recent days. So it wouldn't surprise me if those terrorists were hiding out of a humanitarian area. They have shot at us from humanitarian areas. They have shot at their own people while leaving humanitarian areas. The situation is this, is that we went after, in a precise attack, we went after those two terrorists, and it appears that we took out those two terrorists, which was the mission. Now, whether there was some kind of a secondary fire or something like that that tragically killed others is under investigation.
So you are saying that you didn't target civilians in this, even though it looks like civilians have been killed?
I mean, I can say definitively that the IDF does not target civilians ever. In fact, if you listen to General Petraeus, if you listen to General Petraeus of the American Army, or Colonel Richard Kemp of the British Army, they'll tell you that Israel goes out of its way in a way that no other army has in history to target the terrorists and to avoid civilian casualties. That is what we always do, and that's what we will continue to do, because our fight is with Hamas, not the people of Gaza.
Okay, Egypt has condemned this bombardment and called on you to implement the order by the International Court of Justice to halt your military offensive in Rafah. Isn't this what has happened today exactly the reason why the ICJ asked you to do that?
No, that's a mischaracterization of what the ICJ actually said. They didn't say that we should halt, as your reporter said just before you. They didn't say that we should halt our activities in Rafah. What they said is that we should do our utmost to avoid civilian casualties. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but that is what we already did. And name me another army in history that has moved more than 1 million people out of harm's way to prove that we are going after the terrorists and not the civilians. We will do our absolute utmost to get civilians out of harm's way. We were dropping millions of leaflets, text messages, phone calls, announcements in Arabic to say, get out of harm's way. Hamas wants maximum casualties on both sides because Hamas wants to stop this war so that they can stay in power, so they can do what they've said they wanted to do, which is October 7th, again and again and again. Hamas wants the international community to step in to stop the war so that they can continue to plow through Israeli borders, rape women, dismember children, burn entire families alive. That's what Hamas wants to do. We won't let them.
Those are your claims. Another part of this ruling from
claims.
the ICJ was that you should allow unimpeded aid into Gaza. That is not happening at the moment.
We are doing our utmost to get aid in through, I believe, 9 different routes, including by air, by sea, by land, through multiple
But the main Rafah crossing
crossings.
isn't open at the moment, is it?
The main Rafah crossing is not open because of the Egyptians. So I would ask that you discuss that with the Egyptians. My understanding was that the plan was to open it soon, but that is an issue with the Egyptians. We have taken control of the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing. There we found 50, that's 50 tunnels going into Egypt, where Hamas for the last 16 years has been smuggling in everything from Mercedes to heavy machinery, weapons, missiles, guns, etc. We turned that tap off, and the Egyptians in turn closed the crossing. We call on the Egyptians to open that up. There is, however, the Kerem Shalom crossing is open. We have a crossing in the north. We have the temporary pier that we opened with the Americans. That was the Prime Minister's idea, I think, the second day of the war to open that. It only just became active. We've got aid coming in from the air. We've got aid coming in from Jordan. We will flood the Gaza Strip with aid because our objective is to destroy Hamas. The last 4 battalions of Hamas are in Rafah. We know that we believe that many of the hostages are in Gaza, are in Rafah, and we need to bring them home. Every last hostage needs to come home. We need to destroy Hamas. We need to ensure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to us in the future. And that's exactly what we'll do.
And on that, Qatar has said this action overnight will could hinder the mediation efforts to get a ceasefire and get the hostages out, which is what a lot of Israeli people protest every week for you to do, get the hostages out.
Listen, my friend, Rabbi Doron Perez, his son Daniel's body, he was killed on 7th October, is being held in Gaza. I understand that we need to bring all of the hostages, those who are alive and those who sadly are not alive, home as soon as possible. I'm not going to comment on what Qatar is or isn't saying, and I'm not going to negotiate for their release on the BBC. What I will say is that from day one, we have done everything and we continue to do everything to bring them home. We have learned from the past, having already freed more than half of the hostages. We have learned that a carrot and a stick is needed. We need to keep on the military pressure on Hamas so they realize that they have something to lose, and at the same time use all diplomatic channels. We will continue. We need to destroy Hamas in Rafah or we lose the war.
Okay.
So we will do that.
Okay, Avi Hyman, spokesman for the Israeli government. Appreciate your time on BBC News.
Thank you.